Welcome to the Multifamily Collective. I am your host, Mike Brewer, and on today's show, we have a remarkable guest whose journey through the intense world of real estate development will inspire and resonate with anyone who's ever felt the pressure to succeed in an always-on industry. For 2 decades, Cara Houser navigated the ultra-competitive, high-stakes arena of real estate development, a field where the grind is relentless, and the badge of honor is being so busy that everything else in life seems secondary. Over the years, she led teams that produced more than 3,000 homes in the San Francisco Bay Area, generating over $1.5 billion in value. But the demands of the job, coupled with the expectations she placed on herself as a working parent, eventually led to a breaking point. Exhaustion, overwhelm, and a family health crisis all collided, forcing Cara to take a hard stop and reevaluate everything. In a bold move, she left her high-powered career behind, taking a much needed break to heal both inside and out. And in that space, something amazing happened. Cara found her way back, but on her own terms. She reinvented her career, this time with a fresh perspective, a new strategy, and a whole lot more purpose. The result, a consulting business where she gets to choose projects and clients that align with her values, and more importantly, a life where she has the autonomy to set her own rules and protect the time that matters most. Now, Cara is a career and life pivot coach, speaking and author dedicated to helping others rediscover their spark and build lives and careers that truly light them up. Her award-winning guidebook, Burned Up to Lit Up, Ditch the Grind and Reclaim Your Life, published in 2023, is already making waves and is a must-read for anyone looking to escape the burnout trap and reclaim their joy. I agree with that. I read the book. It is phenomenal. Cara's story is one of resilience, reinvention, and the power of taking control of your life, even after hitting rock bottom. We're thrilled to have her today and to share her insights and wisdom. Now, as is tradition, grab your favorite beverage. For me, today it's Free Reign. American Dirt is the blend. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. Cara and I get into a very deep discussion about burnout, making space for healing, setting boundaries, and so much more. Hope you enjoy it. Cara, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mike. So happy to be here.
Well, I am excited about this conversation. I know we've had a few fits and starts, all my fault in trying to get this one to the record button, but here we are, and I'm very excited. I am excited because I am an avid reader, and you wrote a book called Lit Up. And I, when I first saw it, I think I saw it on LinkedIn, and I bought it immediately. I think it was Mike Wolber that you did an interview with, and that's where I first learned about it. I bought it, I read it, and I sent you a message, and you were so gracious to accept this invitation to be on the podcast today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm pumped to be here.
Well, I want to know, obviously, I think the most obvious question for anybody who's written a book is, why did you write this book? Very interested to unpack that for our listeners and our viewers.
Yes. Well, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I suspect that it's similar in that it's a total labor of love thing. There's some sort of calling of some sort of thing that you discovered, experienced, learned, that you now know so deeply and feel this need to just almost evangelically spread it to the world and, help other folks hopefully take a little bit more of a shortcut through some of the gates of hell you walked through in learning. And that's really kind of what it was. Like my journey with burnout started a decade or more ago, and I learned how to get out of it really the hard way. After kind of a emergency level thing snapped me to attention that what I was doing wasn't sustainable, and I needed to ended up taking an almost 2-year work hiatus to get myself restored and back to health and vitality and all that good jazz. And it's been a long journey of kind of all kinds of cool ups and downs since. And just a couple years ago, actually, way after all of this went down, is actually when I pivoted to doing what I'm doing now, which is a career pivot coach, burnout recovery, guru, the burnout lady, people call me. And I created a course called Sabbatical in a Box, which is which is a guided program to get you out of burnout. And that's what this book was based on, was the course that I created first.
Got it. I got to tell you, it's burnout is real. That is
Mm-hmm.
a real thing, and my imagination tells me it's in part the dedication and the passion you have for the craft or the art that you're putting into the world, right? You get
Mm-hmm.
into that, you get consumed by it, but then there are all these outside pressures, right, wrong, or indifferent. Let's call one family,
Mm-hmm.
and the pressures of just life, things that happen, that come up, that you have to deal with, and you're trying to burn the candle at both ends. But talk to us about specifically about the catalyst. I know you unpack it in the book, and what I'd love to do is just walk through chapter by chapter, heading that is. But the catalyst for what caused this burnout in your life, because it's a pretty dynamic story.
Yeah, thank you. It took me a while to get there. So that's one
Mhm.
thing for folks to sort of know. It's this very gradual frog in the slowly boiling pot of water
Mm.
situation where you're just kind of getting more and more stretched thinner and thinner and thinner, and you think it's fine, and your stress set point, which feels natural to you, is not at all natural. It's so high that you're just kind of a fried mess, but you don't really realize it because you've just been working your way into this less and less sustainable lifestyle over time
Mhm.
until something major happened. So for me, it was a health emergency in my family with one of my kids. Um, that frankly, just caused a freak out. I mean, I really just kind of melted down, and I remember sobbing in our friend's house one day, just being like, I get here, I can't live like this. What am
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
doing? My failure as a person, a parent, a a professional. Like, who am I? And I'm just freaking out so wildly that all the kids just ran to all the corners of the house, and my friend was like, Cara, you might consider a sabbatical. And I was like, sabbatical? I'm not a professor. I'm just a regular person. And then, of course, I told myself all the stuff we all tell ourselves, which are the reasons why we don't take care of ourselves, which is, I don't have it that bad. I don't really deserve it. I should be grateful. I have a roof over my head. I have lovely kids and a good job. What do I, and so we justify treating ourselves like crap and ignoring our own needs. And I call it in the book, trying to be everything to everyone except yourself for years, putting
Mhm.
yourself last on your to-do list. And I mean basic stuff. I don't mean amazing stuff. I don't mean trips to, climbing Mount Everest. I'm talking about basic stuff like enough sleep, proper nutrition, ever moving your body, doing anything fun ever with a friend or on your own, having an interest. You get to a point where you don't even know, like a therapist will ask you, oh, just relax, do something that's relaxing. And you just think, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't
Right.
even, like, my body doesn't do it. Or someone asks you, what do you do for fun? And you think, what a stupid question. I hate you. Like, I don't even have time for anything. And it's
Right.
just when you're in that place, that's rough, right? Because what I just described is not a fun person. It's not a
No.
fun person. It's not an engaged person. You're not good at anything you do anymore, but yet you think you're, if you just work a little more. And really, of course, the answer is completely throwing out your order of operations,
Mm.
starting over.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. I'm curious if you I don't know the answer to this question, but my imagination tells me there's an innate nature about some people that they're just driven, right? And whether that's your origin family story or whatever it is, there's something in you that just drives, such that you feel guilty when you're not at work, right? When you're not doing the things that are necessary to please those people in that ecosystem, whether they work internally or externally in terms of getting a project done. What do you think? What do you think that is? Like, it seems to bring pleasing to mind for me, but
sure.
what is it that
I
makes you
think that's
sacrifice
it.
everything else?
Yeah, because it's not just work, right? It's those are the kind
That's
of
right.
people, the super doers, are the ones who get signed up for different committees, who end
Right.
up being in charge of all kinds of other stuff that they have no business in this wide world even trying to they don't have time again for definitely for anything for themselves, and
Hmm.
probably even for the families in the way that they want to show up, and so it's these super it's the super performers who never want to let anyone down,
Yeah.
who end up letting themselves down. And so in being loyal to the world, we're really quite disloyal to ourselves. And I think it's pleasing. I think it's being a high performer. I think part of it is where you derive your sense of self-worth and your
Mhm.
and your identity. Is
Yeah.
it from your roles out in the world, or is it from your alignment with you? And this is part of the passage out of burnout, and I think into, I don't know, older age too, is
Sure.
out of just being so externally focused on whatever all those external approvals and accolades are, and defining success, happiness, richness, and meaning and such for ourselves. Like, what really matters to me based on my values and my internal compass and North Star and my navigation system? Like, what actually really matters to me? And when we get back in touch with that, at that point, we're able to make decisions for how to spend our time, our energy, our resources so much more easily, and not just be spinning around in anxiety, wondering if we're doing enough all the time. Because we know
Yeah.
we already are.
That's right. That's right. We are enough, right?
We
And
are.
we are doing enough. Let's unpack that a little bit in terms, we'll just go to chapter 2. You talk about your physical space, and I think there's some very interesting takeaways in this chapter that lead to the remark that you just made.
Yes. So the three basic buckets of the journey out, because we know if we're talking about burned out people, we already have way too much stuff on our plate. So what we're
Mhm.
not going to throw at you is a few really ridiculous hacks of stuff to add to your list and life so you can spend money and you can spend time you don't have on a bunch of stuff. We're talking about changing your whole internal operating system. Now that sounds like a big lift, but it's changing our way of being is how we're going to do it. And
Mhm.
it's very practical. So the first bucket is making space. The second bucket is rebuilding. And the third bucket is sustaining. But in the very first step is making space. We make physical space, like you're saying.
Mhm.
And the reason why we do that is that it's a super accessible, visual, it's super satisfying. You do it and you see the results immediately, and you get a win in the bucket. And that Marie Kondo, who I reference in the book, is a brilliant woman,
Yeah.
and she's became famous for a reason. Like, she's right in saying that when we make space in our physical spaces, we actually crack open space in our heads. That
Mhm.
is the place to start. And her book's brilliant because it takes you through all the different, technical things and also emotional elements of it. Because going through doing that if you've got a whole bunch of stuff from weighing you down from decades ago, just going through that process is highly liberating and kind of challenging, but it's very it's a really important place to start. And you don't have to do the whole house. You could just do a closet. You could do your office. You could just do one space where you're like, when you finish, you've accomplished something and you have taken that first step to reclaim space in your life.
Yeah, that's right. And it seems like, to your point about uncluttering the mind, there's something about our minds that hang on to everything visual, and certainly things that you hear and see and so on and so forth. But it just collects up here, right? Collects and collects and collects, not unlike physical stuff in your space. And in
Mhm.
her book, is she the one that one of the exercises might be that you take everything out of a drawer, you put it in a box, and for a week you just, based on whatever you're doing in your house, you use the utensils. Let's say it's something from your kitchen. You use the utensils out of the box, and at the end of a week, whatever you haven't used, get rid of it because you're probably not going to use it, right?
Mm, She might in like one of her subsequent books or show. I don't remember that from her life-changing magic of tidying book. It's
Uh-huh.
more like throw everything out of that drawer onto the floor, and
Okay.
then you touch every single thing one at a time, and you look at it and you say, "Does this spark joy? Yes, keep. No, dump." And there's two dump
Uh,
piles. There's a throwaway and there's a giveaway. Now, and she probably would say this too, I sort of, it's not just about sparking joy. I mean, I also have a category for things that you need. Okay,
Mhm.
towels. Your towels probably aren't going to spark tons of joy in your life, but like you need them. And so then I ask people, does it spark joy? Is it necessary? And if it's necessary, is it necessary now? Like you're saying, in the
Uh,
next 6 months or a year, because like all those little hotel soaps you've been collecting, those are not necessary right now. Like those are just that's how you help determine whether like, is this useful in my life? That's how you help determine whether it's gonna make the cut. Is that how near to you is it gonna be useful, now or later?
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I like that actually. It's so funny that brought to mind. I used to collect soap from my trips, and then my
Yes.
oldest son moved out into an apartment on his own. And I'm like, hey, now I know why I kept all this stuff. Here you go. You have a
Oh,
year's supply of soap.
you found a use for it. Now did he use it?
He did, yeah. I mean, he was a single guy and saved him a bunch of money having to go buy a bunch of soap. So, or at least
Love
that's the story
that.
I told myself.
He's like, "I have an entire drawer." So
Right. Thanks, Dad.
you know what, though? When you're going out on your own, free stuff is amazing. So that's
Oh,
good.
so true. Okay, so physical space. Let's move on to mental space. I know we touched on it briefly there as it relates to your physical space and impacting your mental space, but your next chapter is about mental space. How do we go about clearing that out?
So, I mean, there are whole books about every single thing I reference in here, so this is not meant to be a one size fits all. Mostly, it's a big collection of things that I experimented with, tried, explored, and that many other people have too.
Mhm.
Anything from one of the things that I reference is a mindfulness based stress reduction MBSR class that I took,
Mhm.
which by the way, highly recommend. Amazing. Totally, they're inexpensive. They're 8 weeks. If you don't have much experience with just concepts around mindfulness, just mind body connection, a lot of different techniques that you can use to get back into your body, relax your nervous system, and be in alignment. Something like that can be a very useful thing. The first one I did like that was like 10 years ago. And I remember it blew my mind. It was so useful. And I took it again like a year later because I needed a refresher already. But whatever, you gotta do what you gotta do. So I kind of go through a whole bunch of ways that you can go about testing out and applying to your life, trying to apply to you. And it's
Mhm.
not, and different people are gonna find different collections of things that work. I mean, I sort of joke around too that some things that are gonna be kind of fun, but probably not move the needle in your whole life is like essential oils. Like you're not going to solve all your problems with that, regardless of what Instagram says to you, but it's going to be lovely. It's going to make your space feel good, and that's cool. And I just remember when I was in the depths of burnout, I was trying everything. I would talk to every professional, pseudo professional, book, Google, anything. I wanted there to be a thing I could do, one thing that I could be a silver bullet so that I could then be cured and go back to my unsustainable ways.
Yes.
What I eventually learned was that I needed to figure out, I needed to replace a series of things that I was doing that weren't serving me with habits, mindsets, practices that were. So this is all the things covered in that book. And by the way, every chapter has reflection activities at the end.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not just me going blah blah blah. I tried this. It's about, okay, so here's all the things that here's your cliffs notes, and here's some storytelling, and here's some research around it, and now you get to reflect and ask yourself, do a little bit of inner work, and it's like a friendly container that you can do that in. So every chapter you apply what you've been taking in to your own life. And then, yes, there is a little homework to practice these things that we're talking about, because just reading alone isn't going to move the needle in a way that actually doing, thinking and doing each of the pieces is going to.
Yeah, I think you're so right about that. It's to your point, it's one thing to read it, but it's quite a different thing to be a practitioner of something or even an attempter of being a practitioner of something that really does. And to your point, it's you have to stitch these things together in a recipe that makes sense for you. And
Right.
to the point in your book, it's a fantastic sort of long laundry list of things. Hey, here, I tried all this. Infrared, I think, is in that chapter, the infrared light.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, right. But until I do that, right, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's really effective for me. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But
Yes.
do it, take action, and then stitch it into your recipe. I love that about you.
Exactly. You're making your recipe for well-being with your ingredients that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like I learned what my things I need to do in the morning are to make myself kind of productive and well in my mind for the day. And those will be the basic recipe of chunks of things that go in there are pretty universal, but the specifics are very specific. I like to trail run. My husband thinks that's horrible. He just thinks that's the worst idea ever, right? So like he likes to do water sports. Everybody likes to do their own stuff.
That's right.
And really it doesn't matter as long as you're moving your body in some way.
I agree. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I love trail running too, by the way. It's so fantastic. Okay, let's shift gears. Setting boundaries. I think, who knows, this is my own personal opinion, but to the extent that you can learn how to really set good, intentional boundaries and hold true to those boundaries, your life will change. And if you don't, if they're very loose, it won't. So talk to us about boundaries.
Again, there are whole books about this. In fact, I reference one by Nedra Tawwab in my book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace, and which I read. I mean, this is, if I was to pick like the closest thing to like the big nugget you're going to have to figure out, this is really counts as one of them. So the making space in your schedule and involves setting boundaries, because you can't do that unless you can. And setting boundaries is a tough skill for people who've never done it. It's if it's foreign to you, you're going to be like, I can't do that. There's just no way. I can't let people down. That's not who I am. I'm not a flake, or whatever whatever you're thinking about it. What we don't understand is that the failure to set boundaries is the failure to show respect to ourselves, is the failure to act from a place of self-worth. If we constantly let people overstep, treat us like a doormat, ignore our own needs, if we are illustrating that our needs don't matter by ignoring them ourselves, of course no one else is going to think they matter. I mean, it's a really, really, really rough modeling that we don't understand has implications beyond just ourselves. It actually impacts really negatively how we show up in the world. And if you want to be seen as a leader, executive presence, that kind of person, the kind of person who doesn't have boundaries or respect themselves, will never get there. And so it absolutely has to happen. And there's just way too many inputs and demands on you're never going to get to the bottom of the list, is the point I'm making.
That's right.
So if you've got yourself at the bottom and you think, one day I'm going to pick up that guitar and learn it, one day, never. That's never going to come if you just are constantly allowing everybody to fill your schedule all the time. And again, if you're a doer kind of person, which are the kind of people we're talking to, I suspect.
Yes.
You're the kind of person who just always gets it done. And then people think, oh, well, she can do it. She's done it before. And they keep adding, not because they're horribly Satan-like people. They want to give their lives. You seem capable. They just throw it to you and you keep getting it done. And then even if you say, I'm at capacity, but you still agree to do it, your actions are speaking much more loudly than your words.
That's right.
And that's how our schedules get too full. And that's how we put ourselves to the bottom. We actually don't prioritize ourselves because we don't say no to even the most basic things. Or we think, to your point earlier, we feel guilty that, well, I'm not really busy. I just want to rest. Okay, there's not just want to rest. You need to. You're a person. Also, cars need rest. Have you seen a car that drives 24 hours a day and never gets gas or maintenance? You haven't. And that's because nothing can do that. So if you need a day off for downtime to chill out, that is 100 billion% valid, because that's how you're going to show up the next day or week. Fun, creative, innovative, connecting to your team at work, to your family at home, to your friend who wants to tell you something important, and you can actually be in a headspace to listen to them. It's really essential, which is kind of the bottom line win-win of the book. That super thesis is that this is a win-win thing. When we learn how to take care of ourselves and actually care for ourselves top to bottom, inside and out, we show up so much better for the world. This is not a zero-sum situation. When we learn to do that first, fill our own cup, then we have so much more to offer of any value to people.
That's right. That's right. I want to maybe expand on something you said there, having the ability to say no in a circumstance where it's a superior who you've trained by saying yes all the time. How do you pivot to a environment where it's okay for me to say no? And by the way, I say no, and I don't really have to give you an explanation. Maybe I will as a courtesy, but I don't have to, right? I'm just saying no because I know internally I can't do it. Can you help us maybe give our audience like a tip on how to shift that or how to pivot from being a yes person all the time to finally taking some agency and saying no?
Yeah. So again, tough. And I'm just going to say right now, if you do it or you're doing it for the very first time, you're going to feel like a bodily sense of panic. And so it's okay. Expect it and start small. I like to call them low risk boundary setting, like something that's pick something that's really easy, like someone you don't know that well.
Yeah.
So we're just going to practice our muscles. We're not going to go to the varsity level round here. We're just starting really chill. Someone we barely know kind of wants us to do something for them during a time that we had scheduled our kickboxing class. This is something we normally would have canceled on ourselves for because we have to be everything to everyone. So when that happens, we just practice saying, okay, no, I have a commitment at that time. And like you said, you don't need to say what it is. You don't need to be like, oh, but I have a class. And if I do the class, then I just feel so much happy. You don't need to justify yourself and apologize for living. You need your responsibility is to yourself. You're actually your first and main responsibility because no one else is responsible for you. They can't read your mind. They don't know what you need. And so just saying, I have a commitment at that time. Example, super early morning meetings. You know that in the morning you go for a walk around the neighborhood. And nobody needs to be having an 8 a.m. meeting unless it's an actual emergency
Right.
at work. Okay, so you say, I'm available at 8:30. I have a conflict before that. You don't need to say what no one needs to know everything about your life and your business. Right. Sometimes the conflict is, I'm going to bridge Bridgerton all day on Saturday instead of helping you move. Like, okay, that doesn't make you a bad person. You need to do whatever you need to do to relax too. Eventually you'll get up to varsity level skills where you're able to just say no and just the word no and let it hang in the breeze. It's amazing if you just say something and don't follow it up with a billion extra words, how it just can be. And so start with the easier things before you move on to a work relationship with a superior that you have cultivated, say, for 5 years. Like, that's going to be a little tricky, not impossible or anything, just a little harder because the people have become used to you doing a certain thing.
That's right.
And so if all of a sudden you're acting a little differently, actually, this reminds me of something. I have several friends who, after being that kind of person, taking yes and yes and yes, burning themselves out, like clinical kind of hospital level burnout, and leaving the organization because of illness, they've been replaced by like 3 people. Okay, these are the kind of people who are doing, when you say you're doing too much and people keep piling on you, it is true. And you lose confidence in your own conception of reality.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because it keeps you feeling like you're still not enough, even no matter what you do. So those kind of folks would benefit greatly from what you're saying, which is one way is just to do it really passively, like without making an announcement to the whole wide world, turn your own phone and devices off at 6:30 at night, for example. Turn them off. And this is just a boundary with yourself. You close them in your office, you put them in a drawer, and you go and you make, spaghetti and you eat it with your family, like whatever. So the first boundary is with you.
Yes.
And people will, by the way, start to get used to the fact that you were used to be someone who was responding to emails at 11 p.m., 2 a.m., 6. Like that used to be how you were. And by the way, you might have been pressured to do it, but you also agreed. And when you stop, you'll find Interestingly, every time you send an email, you tend to get them back. So stop sending so many, okay? Like, a lot of times things don't have to be responded to right this instant, and sometimes not at all. It's amazing to me how many things just kind of go away.
That's
Yeah,
right.
once you know that they're not if you're a professional, you know what matters, right? You know what's important. So
Yeah.
really focus on allowing those things to bubble to the top and the rest to fall away. And just stop being so responsive. Now, I've had people look at me like I have three heads when I've said that. Like, what do you mean stop being so responsive? That's what being a good person's about. Yes, and
Mm,
it also kind of isn't. Because when you're that responsive to everyone else, you're basically helping fuel this everything's always an emergency
that's right.
culture at work, and everything isn't. I mean, I was a real estate developer for 20 years. Yeah, I mean, it's a high pressure environment, but people were also not dying every day, okay?
That's right.
Just everybody take 5. We can plan our day and our projects better such that everything isn't chicken with your head cut off if you do it thoughtfully.
That's right. I think not only if we do it thoughtfully, but most people, if we understand that most people are reasonable people, and to the
Mhm.
extent you push back by saying no or yes, but I can do it on a different day at a different time, most people are reasonable. You don't have to accommodate 100% of the time
Yeah,
everybody else's
and I
schedule.
put a lot of that win-win scripting language in the book, actually.
Hmm.
I don't have the capacity to take that on now, but let's revisit priorities and make sure that I understand that we're on the same page as to what's most important. So I'm doing the most important things first. Or I don't have the capacity for that now, but let's figure out how we can get it done.
Yeah,
Maybe we can bring some more resources on, or maybe, you know, there are a lot of artful ways to not just be a martyr for everybody and to help also be really thoughtful and team playerish about things. You can respond to people in a way that shows you care about the need without personally feeling like you have to, by yourself, do everything.
that's right. That's right. Let's talk about vision.
Mhm.
Your next chapter is start with your vision. This is in the rebuilding bucket.
Yeah, so rebuilding, this is a fun bucket. And it does start with your vision. And this whole chapter is about something that some people are going to be like, girl, that is so woo. But it's not. It's actually wow. And the reason why is that it's not just like putting some pictures on a page and then putting it in your drawer and expecting it to come out at night and like sprinkle magic dust. It's really about taking the time. So the exercise I have is called the 7-year fever dream time machine.
Hmm.
And it's a guided exercise where you just allow yourself to go pie in the sky. Like, what's everything going to look like in your life in 7 years? Where do you live? What do you do? Who's there? What happens for fun? What are you eating? What view is out your window? Like, what goes on in this awesome life? And you take your inner cop, you put them on mute for a minute, and you just allow yourself to do all that awesome stuff. And it's not because necessarily every single thing on there is going to happen exactly, but it just allows you to kind of kick off the blinders. And now we've made enough space that we can do this and we can allow ourselves a moment to actually even have a dream or an idea. Sometimes it's stuff we've wanted for years. Sometimes new things have come open into our mind now that we've allowed space for them to do that. And the reason why we do it is so that, yes, we spend a few minutes each day kind of reflecting and imagining. But what we're also doing, and this is equally and more, I don't know, equally important, is that we're doing stuff now because
Yeah.
now it's in our head. So now, consciously and subconsciously, we are moving in that direction. So let's say one of the things I want to do, for example, is have a retreat center in the Redwoods, right? So now
Yeah.
that I know that that's something I want to have in the coming years, my ears are always open. My eyes are always open. If I see something, I'm talking to someone. Each week I'll make a little move. I'll talk to somebody about small business financing. I'll do like I the way that you pick what makes it onto your schedule right now and what makes it into your to-do list and what gets kicked out is by knowing what your big picture destination, generally speaking, looks like.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a 70 billion point list of how I'm going to get there because that's actually impossible to do. We're talking about big goals we have, and By the way, even if you have a 1,000-point list, it's not going to quite work that way because
That's
everything you do interacts with the world, and the world will give you feedback, cold and hot, and you will need to adjust and pivot anyway. So we don't need to get all freaked out about not knowing you're not going to know every single thing about something you don't know. You don't know
that's
yet.
right.
You've got this big picture, and then you just know, like, okay, I'm in my future self, I'm vibrantly healthy. I travel, I run marathons, whatever it is. Okay,
Right.
so in order to have that happen, what needs to be on the list today to get me to one step closer? What needs to be on the list is I get my butt out of the house and I walk around the block, and then I walk for 2 miles, and then whatever. So that is how the easiest way I can think of to describe how it's connected, what's
Mhm.
happening now and where we want to be. That's why those things are absolutely um, they're connected in ways that feel now very practical and obvious because we've only got so much time, right? And we want to spend our hours in the day getting ourselves towards where we actually want to be.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting. I was sitting in a council meeting this morning, and there was a speaker talking about, let's call it gap and gain, and
Mhm.
really just creating this sort of manufactured gap in your life. In other words, thinking bigger, thinking about where you want to be. To your point, 7 years from now, be it 10 years. It doesn't matter what the timeline is. It's
Mhm.
just some point in the distance. And I like what you said about taking that inner cop, like shut that guy down. You know what? Go sit on the couch for a little bit. We're dreaming big here, and don't put any constraints on that picture of what you want to do in the future, and walk through all those important mind, body, heart, soul kind of stuff in your life, and really create that picture. And to your point, it's your mind. It's weird. Call it cosmic habit force. Call it God. Call it whatever you want to call it. Something in the universe in here starts to connect things out in the world to that thing in your head. And all of a
Yes.
sudden you wake up 5 years from now and some of those things that you wrote down or thought about come to be. It's weird.
Yes. It is weird, and it is also the way. It is the way. It
Hmm.
doesn't happen by accident.
That's right.
You don't get somewhere that you kind of maybe thought you wanted to be by never, ever putting any attention, time, energy, or resources into it.
Hmm.
And if you think about it that way, it kind of feels obvious. But yes, it's not a way, it's the way. If you ask anybody who's ever done anything, it's because they've initially had an idea about it.
That's right.
And they allowed it some oxygen. They allowed it some space in their life. They allowed it some belief that it could happen. And they allow themselves to notice things. Like, I was thinking about this goal I had, and I thought, you know what I need to do? I need to call this lady. She just popped into my head. And I gave her a call, and I told her, and she gave me tip. There is so much support and magical wonderfulness out there for us, but we have to be open to noticing it and then taking those steps.
That's right. I think that's a nice segue to your next chapter when you talk about mindset, right? You can
Mhm.
have a growth mindset, or you can have forget the opposite of the growth mindset, but
Mhm.
a fixed mindset.
Yes.
But talk to us about that, how important that is as it relates to what we just unpacked with vision.
Yeah. So now that we've done our fun visioning, so awesome, we are going to do some practical technical skill building around mindset. And
Hmm.
everyone talks about mindset, and you've seen memes on the internet, and you're like, blah, blah, mindset. Well, mindset is actually
I,
highly important. It is highly foundational, right? Because our thoughts come eventually where we go. Our thoughts become our beliefs, they become our actions, they become our habits, those things become our lives.
that's right.
And so it's obvious. So if you think about it that way, it's clear that it's an essential building block. So I talk about a few different mindset shifts, and one of them is fixed to growth. And
Mhm.
a lot of people have heard about this now. They're actually starting to teach about it in kids in schools, which I love. And in its most basic sense, it's just growth mindset is knowing that we can and are always learning and growing if we choose to know that that's how it is and that that's
Mhm.
possible. Um, And it sounds like instead of saying, I can't do that, I could never do that, it's too late, it sounds like a shift from that to, well, I could try. I mean, everyone who's ever become good at anything starts bad. That's how you do it. I mean, I didn't start playing guitar until my 40s, and I never played an instrument. So guess what I was at the beginning? Bad, very bad, okay? There is no way around that. You have to be able to do, and I'm still kind of, getting there, whatever, like, it's a process. But it's a process I enjoy, it's not a chore. And so
Right.
that's why it makes it onto the list. And one of the most relaxing and kind of mindful things I do, because I gotta focus on it, 'cause it's hard. So I'm not sitting around thinking about all the terrible things in life when I'm doing it. Um, Plus music's just restorative for a lot of people, but
Sure.
the point I'm making there is that whatever it is, we've all got something. I have a friend who's like, "I'm gonna learn how to ride a motorcycle." I'm like, "Okay." Whatever it is that wants in will keep popping up
That's
once
right.
you give yourself a little bit of space to hear that, and on your morning walks will be one time it probably will. And so when it does, just start offering that thing some space. And you may do that thing for a year and decide it's time to change. You may do that thing for a lifetime. Like, I don't know. But just knowing that at any point you can learn and grow and change and evolve, and that's actually what humans are meant to do, then you're open to that happening and you stay out of these very self-sabotaging um, self-talk around
Mm.
how, you're terrible at that, you're never going to get better, this is how it is, whatever. So that's important. And then I just talk about a couple other things like switching from I should do all this stuff to I choose. That's a much more
Mm.
empowering set um, of beliefs to kind of to start your day. People who don't set boundaries tend to have a lot of shoulds about how they should be doing. It's a lot less empowered than someone who's choosing to do something. You can choose to be of service, that's great. But when you choose to do it, that's a lot different than being there because you should out of obligation.
Right.
And
Right.
then the last thing is cultivating what I call a sabbatical style mindset and way of being, which has to do with the fact that you have everything inside you already. You, me, every single person. They don't need to go and spend $1 million and live in a cave for 5 years. Like you can, you can
That's
actually
right.
create this life that you want, and you can start right now in your house that you live in right now. You may decide you're going to move to somewhere else because that's ultimately been your dream. Like, cool, but you can start right now to get really clear in yourself so that you then even know where you want to go.
I think you hit on something very important there. Sometimes you look at this, where your life is today, and you think about where you want to be, and you just look at the path between here and there, and it's just so overwhelming. It's
Mhm.
because you've made it so colossal in your mind. You're just paralyzed to take the first step. But it's okay to dream about that big thing. But
It is scary. That's what keeps
Mhm.
people stuck. And
That's
so
right.
any change is very incremental, which is why the book is set up. It's not really a skip around book. It really is meant to be start to finish, one chapter a week. Like let's build ourselves kind of back one step at a time. And so that it's not overwhelming. I mean, I remember when I was burned out, just the idea of doing anything at all was too much. Not
Right.
way too much.
Breakfast.
So you have
What?
to meet people where they are, you
See,
know?
that's exactly right. It's you've got to figure out how to reintroduce catalysts in your mind that are just not so overwhelming at first. And it could
Mhm.
be, look, just get out of bed and make your bed. Boom,
Yep.
win for the day, win for the week, win for the month, whatever. But it was an
Yes.
action that you took to, and then you start stacking those things together
Mhm.
or on top of one another, and all of a sudden you're doing miraculous things, whatever, some year
Totally.
removed from now.
I mean, a really simple first step for most of my clients, and this is gonna be controversial, so don't get mad, shoot the messenger here. Instead of waking up and looking at your phone first thing, okay, and I know I've done that too, so don't get mad at me, is addictive. Instead of waking up to the phone, doom scroll, news, social media, I look terrible compared to those people, whatever it is that's happening, that's not how. First thing in the morning, wake up, have a glass of water, go for a walk, either journal or do some mindfulness prayer situation, some head thing for 10 minutes.
Mhm.
That is the same amount of time that you just spent on your phone deciding the day and the world are horrible and we shouldn't do anything. And instead of letting some device dictate your mood and your actions for the whole day, you've decided what it is. Okay, now you can do your social media if you want at some point. Cool. And you've got you're already fortified for the day.
Right.
So you're not going to go down the rabbit hole.
That's right. That's right. I love that word, fortified. You're
Mm-hmm.
sort of putting your armor on and you're ready. Now you can
Yeah,
take
but
that
really
stuff in.
healthy armor. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you're playing a video game and you're taking the health potion. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm totally full, ready to do this day.
I love it. I love that. So let's shift from mindset to schedule. Rebuilding your
Mhm.
schedule.
So we've kind of touched on this a little bit and how we've been leapfrogging along, but this is being very intentional about how you spend your day.
Mm-hmm.
Your days add up to weeks, add up to a year, add up to a life. And so the thing we just talked about, what happens, how do you spend your first hour of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Just taking back ownership of that instead of just stumbling into whatever kind of kicks you the hardest from social media or the rest of the world is probably, if I would say to listeners, like the number one thing they can do. Make yourself a new, I call it morning ritual instead of morning routine, because no one wants to hear about cold showers and all this crap. Just decide
True.
on like what are the first few little ingredients of your day and then give yourself a 30-day challenge. Because if you write down the things, 3 things, put them by your bed. When you wake up, your brain's going to want to talk you out of it. Your brain likes to do things it already is doing because that takes up less power and energy. So anytime you make a habit change, it's tough, okay? Just know that. Write it down, wake up, look at it, do it. Do not overthink it. If you challenge yourself to do it every day or almost every day for a month, now you're in habit territory. Now
Yeah.
you've gotten to a point where that stuff it's becoming more your default mode. It's becoming more what you do on autopilot. So instead of autopilot, gulping down coffee and looking at the horrible news of the world, your autopilot is sipping your amazing French press while you look out the window and contemplate the birds. There's just a lot of different ways that you can order this time. Just so if you can do that, stick with it for 30 days, and you're going to get to a point where now that's not only what you're used to it, you like it. Your body's like, yeah, this is what we do. You're starting to feel a little better. You're actually spending energy on things that give it back versus things that suck the will to live out of you. And when you give energy to things that give it back, now you have more energy. It's amazing, right? So and then the rest of your day, like obviously we've all got our different demands on our lives.
Sure.
And so there is absolutely not a one size fits all, but it's about being very intentional about what gets in, what gets out, making sure that stuff that you need/want that brings you joy is high on the list
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you know that that's the most generous thing you can do when you're taking good care and showing up lit up for the world. Well, now now the world's appreciating having you around and you're actually helping other people. I often tell parents this, and I have to remind myself. The best thing you can do for your own kids is to be happy yourself. Stop
Oh,
hassling them so much. Make yourself happy, and you will just spread that joy around your household in ways that are effortless.
and it's amazing. I think to your implied point there, it just builds on itself, and there's sort of the cycle. It doesn't mean you don't have bad days from time to time,
No,
but
of course not.
generally speaking, you get this cycle going, and then it just builds on itself over time.
You start spiraling up instead of
Yeah.
the endless downward into burnout hell, which most of us have visited and would like not to hang out in.
It's not a place I want to go.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and this is scratching my own itch, as it relates to a morning ritual or morning routine. How important do you think a nighttime routine is as it plays into? And I'm really kind of, who
Mhm.
knows if this is right or wrong, but I think that rest and restorative thing that we call sleep, right,
Yes.
has some sort of mental thing that happens
Mhm.
when you're in rest state. And I wonder if that's primed by an evening routine or if that's something that you do yourself.
Absolutely. Some would argue it's maybe even more important than what
Mm-hmm.
happens in the morning. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely important, probably equally important, because if you don't sleep, how can you start your day fresh and rested?
Mm-hmm.
So very simple tips for that are pretty widespread and most of us know and a lot of us don't do.
Yeah.
Are not having your phone and your email the very last thing you see before sleep. It's hard to drift into sleep when your brain's really busy.
Yeah.
So really simple things like lowering the lighting, having something relaxing that you do for not eating a huge meal right before bed, just doing kind of easing into it and doing things that aren't going to be super stimulating to you for probably an hour. I did a podcast and another one of the guests was a doctor. He was a surgeon who's now a coach and he's amazing. And he was talking quite a bit about this. His name's Brian Segre. He's actually, I think, he and I did a podcast together that's not released yet, but he's super cool. And he talks about the importance of this issue. I have this cool device. I'm not a spokesperson, but it's really cool. It's called the Aura Ring, and it tracks like my biometric, this and that, and also my sleep. And it's super cool because it helps you fine tune yourself into what works for you. It'll tell you, hey, last night, that wasn't a very good night of sleep. What were you doing the 2 hours before? And you'll say to yourself, oh, okay, that's not working for me. So yes, I think that just to agree with you, it's super important.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's in all those points that you made are germane, and I think ultimately it's not just in an effort to make sure that the morning kicks off to the right start, but there are things that happen in your mind over the evening. So if you primed yourself with, let's go back to your vision for a second. If you primed yourself by maybe looking at that visual that you created or some of those things that you want out here 7 years from now, you put that in your head right before bed, and it's interesting, right?
Yes, love that, and I do that, and that's something I absolutely recommend as sort of you're kind of seeding your brain with
Yeah,
good seeds, good, healthy, happy seeds, which then germinate and do things in the night.
I
And
like the way you put
it's
that.
really
Yeah.
cool because you do come up with, ideas will sprout and new insights that you didn't have before. I love that.
So all of it, and we're leading up to this chapter called resilience, but I don't know if resilience and discipline are the same thing, but for whatever reason, my head's telling me they are. There is a real art in discipline, or a real art in creating resilience in your life. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering tips and tactics to one of the hardest things. Jocko Willink says discipline equals freedom. And people think, oh, discipline, that sucks. I got to do all this stuff, and that's not freedom. But I think it is if people really wrap their heads around it. So talk to us about resilience.
Well, two things. One, on what you just said, like one of the things I talk about is scheduling fun, which
Ooh.
sounds equally ridiculous. Dude,
Yeah.
fun. Scheduling isn't fun. I don't want to make a plan. I plan in my job. Okay, and if you don't get it into your calendar as the responsible adult that you are, you're not going to do it.
Right.
You're not going to do it. You're going to put it last. You're going to put joy, fun, play, humor last. And those things are absolutely essential. So this last bucket is sustaining, and resilience and joy are the pieces. So one, make a plan. First of all, if you forgot what you think is fun, do this exercise in the book to dip back into the well there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then pick something and give it space and put it high. That way at the end, I'm not even going to make you pick something to kick off the list. I'm just imploring that you put something cool at the top so that at the end of the day, when you're out of time, something less cool falls off. You don't even have to
Mm.
know what it is. It'll just fall off. Instead of you falling off your own list, things that we're all doing stuff, I can guarantee you right now, that if we stopped doing it, nobody would really care that much. I
That's right.
mean, maybe they would a little, but like, is it more important for someone else not to be ever upset for 1 second, or for you to be a happy, healthy, whole, vibrant human being? I mean, which is more important, right? It's you. That's
That's
what
right.
who you're here to share you're here to share your gifts with the world, and you can't share them if you're not living them. So
Yeah,
that thing, and then the thing about resilience, I was joking with you when we first got on here because we talked about playing guitar and how
that's
maybe
right.
we're going to do that together. And I confess to you that my guitar playing has fallen off a cliff this summer. Okay, so that's one of my ingredients for well-being. I love it. It gives me relaxation, joy, sense of centeredness,
Mm.
and I haven't really done it. Okay, so instead of looking back at the summer and being like, what an utter failure I am, what lack of willpower, I suck. Instead of doing that, just grace is the number one word I would say. When you fall off, which you will, okay, we have aging parents, we have teenagers crashing our cars, like things happen, okay? And when they do, instead of just berating yourself for getting off of all your things for a day or two or a month, just notice, offer grace, get back on to your things that you know are important to you, and just without a whole lot of drama around it, just start doing it again. And when we offer ourselves that grace, we can then offer it to others. Now we're a lot less judgmental and kind of nasty to be around for the rest of the world, which is another reason why, you'll read that we can't love others more than we love ourselves. Like, I believe that. If you
Yeah,
don't show yourself these things, you actually don't have the skill to do it for anyone else, and you don't have your cup is empty. You have really nothing terribly wonderful to offer.
that's right. That's right. You brought to mind, I think sometimes meditation is misunderstood, and I'll tie this back to something that you just said. But the real rep in meditation is knowing when you're not doing right, when you're not focused on breath or focused or centered or whatever that is. And the rep
Mhm.
is bringing yourself back, right? Mind
Yes.
goes off. The rep is coming back to this moment. In
Mhm.
life, we're off. We haven't played guitar all summer. We recognize it. We come back. That's the rep, right? And that's the slow
Right.
build toward that resilience and that discipline that is necessary.
It is. It's a really beautiful practice. I mean, I
Mhm.
love, I have the Calm app, which on the note of going to sleep, they have a lot of really cool sleep stories and just sleep meditations, which people freaking swear by. So you can think about supports like that. But there's this thing called the Daily Trip, which is a 10-minute daily series by, shoot, I can't remember his name now. It's Jeff something. He does a beautiful, it's so good. I mean, he so gets just what you said. I mean, he takes meditation from being this very esoteric thing that, you have to know how to do it. And he's like, no, well, no, you're never going to know anything. All we're doing is practicing
That's right.
and practicing being a person and allowing life to be. And just that practice, it just allows that beat of space so that when you do start to spiral, now you have that little bit extra capacity to catch yourself and be like, "Those are some mean stuff I'm saying here to me," which I've been guilty of. Most of us are,
That's right.
but instead of going all the way down, I'm able to be like, "Okay, time out. Okay, we're gonna take a little break and practice some of these skills that we've been working on." And mindfulness is that way. It's just like physical fitness. Like, what makes us think we're gonna stay strong if we never move? You
Right.
aren't. And just same thing with mind fitness. You're not gonna stay centered. You're not gonna stay lots of things if you don't practice doing it forever.
For forever.
I'm sorry. It's never really over, you know?
No, it's not over until it really is over.
Well,
But
it's
then you're
over.
not really caring about much at that point.
But ideally, you've lived in a way that's felt really good and true to you. The greatest regret of the dying, and I talk about this in the book too, is living the
Yeah,
life others expect of you and not true to you,
that's
and the
right.
others all kind of flow from that. And so to the extent that you're out of alignment, usually your body and mind are sending up flares. One of mine is migraine headaches. When I'm starting to
Mm.
do stuff that's not working, my body will immediately start telling me in very painful ways that we need to make some adjustments. We all have things. We may not be conscious of them, but there's information coming that something needs attention.
It's amazing how your body, whether you get sick, whether you get migraines, whether you get aches and pains or whatever, your body is really a good tell for much of what is amiss in your life.
Mhm.
And you need to
Totally.
listen. You need to listen.
Mhm.
So, using that as a jumping off point, joy is the last chapter. So, let's use a little bit of unpacking of joy and then kind of bring this thing to a conclusion and where people can hook up with you and learn more. And I've been all over your website and it's fantastic. And I'm going to highly recommend it and link it up in the show notes. But talk to us about joy and we'll wrap from there.
Well, it's at the end of the book, and it's interesting because what I found in working with other people and in my own journey is that one of the first things to go on the way down to burnout is your loss of sense of humor, fun, and joy, and it's one of the last things to come back.
Ooh.
So here's a little canary in the coal mine warning for you, gentle. If you cannot remember the last time you've really laughed or done something fun, it's a signal that burnout might be coming to you.
Mm.
And when I talk to clients about that, they're always like, "Wow, that's freakishly right. Like, I was so funny 5 years ago. Like, what is going on? My ability to roll with the punches in life is just not there." And so, if that's true, then you can do a little mini audit and a little mini exploration of think back in your life from when you were a little kid all the way to now. Things that have historically brought you any joy, fun, humor, people, things, activities, places, and then give yourself a little mini brainstorm too of mining for things that you maybe have always thought would be cool, but again, your adult responsible self has smacked out of the way.
Mm.
Write them all down and pick one and allow yourself space once a week to do that thing.
Mm.
Saturday morning, if it's something long term like play guitar, what's step 1? Get a guitar. Okay? That's week 1. Week 2, find some teaching online or a person. Step 3, tune the thing. Whatever, pick
Yeah.
the thing. It could be really simple too. Like, I'm going to start walking. Yay. Saturday mornings, 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Pick a thing that's so incremental that you're really going to do it.
Yeah.
And then you can let it start to build on itself because it will be a thing ultimately that gives you energy and joy. And you won't have to beat yourself into doing it. It'll just kind of build into your life. And it's amazing how catching that is. Because now that you've built that habit formation muscle, you'll find that all these other things that once felt impossible to you are now feeling a lot more accessible. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I've always wanted to take this class around something professional, let's say. You might now find that you have the energy and motivation to do that because you've allowed yourself um, just the building of that muscle. And also, you've built in greater energy sources in your life.
Yeah, it's interesting how it all ties together. These are not my novel thoughts, but I read a book many years ago, talked about the heart, the body, the mind, and the soul. And to the extent that you're massaging those four areas, to speak to your point, with little incremental things, getting just a little bit better every day in those four areas of your life, they feed on one another so that you can show up as a beneficial presence in the world, not only for yourself, but for other people.
Hmm.
And if you're not doing that, then the alternatives start to present themselves.
Yes, exactly. Hmm.
So this has been amazing. I loved your book. It's one of those books, like, I know it, you literally say in here, read a chapter a week. I read the whole thing start to finish, like 2 days. So I violated the rule.
Hey, if it was interesting to you and you wanted to keep, like, do it.
I did it. I did the exercises. So, and
Nice.
answer there are a lot of questions in here, deep, thoughtful questions. So anyway, long story short, I really found the book to be incredibly useful. A good laundry list, things that I have done in the past, new things that I've never thought of doing. So I have penciled out to do in this coming year. But thank you for writing it. I know writing a book is a monumental exercise. Even if you're borrowing from other people, it's still a big monumental exercise to put it all together in a package and send it out into the world. So thank you for doing it. I
Thank you
appreciate
for
that.
reading it, and thank you for this time today. It's been so lovely to talk with you. I appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome. And tell our listeners and certainly our viewers where they can find out more information. And we'll certainly endorse all of that in our show notes and our promotion.
Yes. Well, the easiest way to find me is my website, carahouser.com, and you'll find information on coaching and workshops and keynotes there. I'm on LinkedIn a bunch, and I'd love to connect with you there too. And those are probably the easiest things. And the book's on Amazon and anywhere else you can find books. And there's an audiobook too. So for all of my folks who are like me, who read via listening, you are set. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we will link both of those up in the show notes. And just sort of in cap, we are going to give away Cara's book in a couple of weeks. So look for that on LinkedIn and sign up, and we'll mail one out to you. So, Cara, thank you very much for this time. Really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Loved it.